Miranda's Secret by NETHERTON writers. Miranda smiled as she sipped her early morning cup of tea. Feeling pleased and proud of herself, she wondered if love at first sight could really happen. Is it really possible? Have I finally met the man of my dreams? She felt the warmth of the summer sun on her face and hands as it streamed through the French doors of her back kitchen. I'll drink this outside, she thought. She stood up, pushed the patio doors wide open and inhaled deeply. She made her way out onto the patio, where she stood entranced, savouring the strong scent of the sweet peas that encircled the paving. At 38 years of age, she had never had a serious relationship in her life, and she had long since given up on thoughts of marriage and having a family. Her plain looks meant that she didn't get many dating invitations, although the ones she did get were from genuine people who liked her for who she was, until she told them her secret. She thought back to the previous evening and the speed dating event that she had attended. At first she thought the idea was ridiculous, a group of people sitting opposite each other at a row of tables, then moving along to the next person at the behest of a ringing bell. It seemed to her the whole idea would have been more suited to a Monty Python sketch, but she attended anyway, having successfully convinced herself that it was more out of curiosity than desperation. What followed was a succession of brief meetings with a motley collection of would-be suitors, one of whom actually sat opposite her, picking his nose and farting. Then a well-dressed, handsome man sat down and smiled warmly at her. "Good evening," he said. "I'm Ronnie." "Hello, Ronnie," she replied. "I'm Miranda." Ronnie's warm smile grew into a cheeky boyish grin, and she was smitten. A whirlwind of conversation followed, and by the end of the evening she felt as though she had known Ronnie all her life. She loved everything about him. He saw her home and asked if he could take her out on a proper date. She jumped at the chance. She finished her cup of tea and started to think about what to wear for her date later that day. She wanted to dress well enough to impress Ronnie and make sure he found her attractive, but she didn't want to give any clues as to how enormously wealthy she was. She also wondered about her secret. Should she tell him or not? She decided against it. All her previous relationships had ended because of it. It seemed that men couldn't handle what she told them, and even though some of them tried to cope with it, it eventually proved too much to handle. She was determined not to lose Ronnie in the same way, so she decided not to tell him. Their first date went brilliantly, so did the next, and the next. Before long they were inseparable, and Ronnie had moved in with her. Miranda was besotted. She thought he was sure to propose to her soon. Then one day she arrived home early and overheard him on his mobile phone. She thought her dreams had come true. "Yes, there's no doubt about it," she heard him say. "She's definitely the one I've been looking for." A shiver of excitement rippled through her entire body. "He's going to ask me to marry him," she thought. Ronnie continued his conversation. "Not only is she red hot in bed, she's worth millions. I'll bleed her dry, and then I'll pull the plug on her," he laughed. Miranda was devastated. She went back out again before Ronnie realised she had returned home. She walked aimlessly in a daze with Ronnie's words echoing over and over in her head. "I'll bleed her dry, and then I'll pull the plug on her." After a couple of hours, she realised her feet were getting quite sore and headed for home again. "They say revenge is a dish best eaten cold," she thought. "It's time I told that slimy rotter my secret." By the time she arrived home, Miranda had formulated a plan and decided to put it into action straight away. She banged the front door shut behind her and called out loudly, "I'm home, Ron." Ronnie greeted her with his winning smile. "Cup of tea, love," he said. "Do you know what, Ron?" she replied. "I'll have one later. I fancy a good soak in the bath. Why don't you join me?" Ronnie's eyes lit up and he started to feel aroused. "You go and run us a bath while I sort myself out," Miranda continued, "and I'll come up and join you." Ronnie was fired up and he didn't need telling twice. He ran up the stairs like a rat up a spout. By the time Miranda got to the bathroom, Ronnie was already relaxing in the hot soapy water and letting his tensions of the day drain away. Miranda started to rub his back, first with a flannel and then with her hands. She pushed her hands under his arms to the front of his chest and playfully tweaked his nipples. "Come on," he said, "get in with me." "Try and stop me," Miranda purred sexily as she started to strip off her clothes. Soon she was sitting in the bath behind him, stroking and kissing his back. "I never did tell you my secret, did I, sweetheart?" "Secret? What secret?" Ronnie asked, as he leisurely rubbed her smooth thigh. "I'm a witch." "Well, I know you've got a bit of a temper, but that's stretching it a bit, isn't it?" Ronnie laughed. "No, I mean I'm a real witch. You know, broomstick, pointy hat, spells, the full Monty." Ronnie laughed even louder, turned to face her and started kissing her breasts. Her nipples suddenly felt unusually large in his mouth. He pulled his head back and looked at her breasts. They were enormous. He looked up into her face and she seemed to tower above him. "Something wrong, little man?" she smiled. "I'm shrinking," he said in a helian voice. He started to panic and stood up between her thighs. He couldn't see over the side of the bath, so he stood on her leg and looked down at the bathroom floor. It seemed so far away. "No, you don't," she said, lifting him up with one hand and putting him back in the water. By now his feet couldn't touch the bottom of the bath, and he started to swim. "Miranda, help me," he squeaked. "I can't breathe in all this foam." He wrapped himself around her big toe and tried to cling on, but his arms kept growing ever shorter, and he slipped back into the soapy water. Miranda reached over and tugged at the chain connected to the plug. "You were going to pull the plug on me, weren't you, my love?" she cooed. "But I beat you to it, didn't I?" Ronnie heard the water gurgling and felt himself being swept along by the strong currents as the bath started to empty. Seconds later, he could feel a circular motion swirling him in ever-decreasing circles around the edge of the plug hole. "Bye-bye, Ronnie," Miranda's voice echoed.